Which deck needs buffs? Decks don't need buffs. Like, if you go to the Balance Council, these are not decks. You put cards here, okay? So I don't understand why people like this doesn't allow me to put an archetype in, and it doesn't. This is not an archetype. This is a leader ability. There's a big fucking difference. Okay? You can only put cards here, and you can only put units up here, and any other card here or leader ability. But this part is just units, right? You mean cards? No. I'm not. This isn't a gotcha thing. This is a I'm not making a gotcha argument. I'm highlighting what I think is a very important point. Which is that the council doesn't get to buff decks or archetypes, it gets to buff individual cards. And trying to buff archetypes or decks backfires and has bad consequences and leads to the same shit being added. Like if you add provisions to a deck, the same boring mid-range cards that already get played more, just in that deck. If you give a leader too many provisions, that leader will just become a bucket for the same degenerate or boring mid-range decks that already see play. Like it doesn't. The goal of the council should be to make Gwent a better game, and like I know it sounds obvious like a truism, but you have to start from that. How do you make it a better game? You have to ask. How do you make it a better game? A better game is one where the players enjoy playing it more. Okay, not one where the Gwent data stats look different, not one where like the factions have an equal win rate, not one where like the pros feel like it's balanced. That's not what makes Gwent a better game. Gwent becomes a better game when more people enjoy playing it. And how do we make Gwent more enjoyable to play and to watch? People like watching interesting decks and interesting interactions between the cards. No one likes watching numbers go up by like 2 or 3 at a time, and then the side with like 2 more points wins. Like that's not interesting. What people enjoy seeing is like complex interactions between the cards, multi-step like thought process, strategy, asymmetrical warfare. Like opponent has control, you counter it with something that isn't like anti-control, right? Like you like that's what's interesting. Asymmetry is interesting, right? Creativity is interesting. Multi-card combos are interesting. Like the other day when I played the Gerwin, like I had a volunteer on the board, and then I dropped Eltibald, clicked the volunteer and used that to play a Magni division from my deck. The Magni played a Battle Stations from my hand, which played two specials from my hand. Or sorry, 2 bronzes from my hand, one of which was a special, one of which was a Magni. We killed the Vanadine without ever touching it, right? Just 6 damage because we played like that was a fun thing for people to see, and it was a creative deck that like Lirio made that allows for that to happen. But there's so much nope cards in the game, and so much like anti-fun and anti-combo and like a bunch of mid-range independently playing for high-value cards that shit needs to get nerfed because it's not good for the game. Can we nerf leader order? What does order mean? What do you mean by order? Ability? No, you can do what you see on the screen. You can add +1 power or -1 power to a unit, and you can add or remove a provision from cards. Like that's all you can do. Lydia, like to once again conduct a poll to see community's level of support for each of man's council. The poll is not you pick your top 3, but others like all the changes you would support if we put it on our final VC list. Keep in mind that we are not necessarily advocating for all these changes. This survey is to give an insight from the community on whether or not certain changes could successfully make it through the voting process. If you're not advocating for them, then why are you putting them on the poll? I've tried not to include many repeat options that were in previous polls since we already had a good idea how much support there is. Just because the previous option was removed does not mean we have stopped considering them. Especially, right. So the Lirio Shinmiri Council has some cards that on our list, like they start with, I think Shin starts with like archetypes and things that are underplayed and things that are overplayed, and he comes up with cards that could be buffed or nerfed to buff the underplayed stuff and nerf the overplayed stuff. And then he has that list in his spreadsheet, like you can go see it. And then he picks from that list of like, okay, of those cards that I think should be buffed, which of them is good to buff now based on the meta? Like that's his process, right? So you can change your votes even after you submit them. There's no hard deadline, but we will likely make our final around 5 days before the end of the season. Leader now will not simply take the top 3 voted options each character, throw them to our final BC list. There are a lot of other things to consider, including but not limited to faction balance, what other official groups are doing, and what the casual voters might be pushing through. For this month, we expect the following changes to very likely go through. Blue Stripes is going to get +1 power. China's 2-step plan we started last month. Anglerfish -1 provision. Necrotol's... Yeah, Necrotol is a piece of shit. There is no one I hate more in the Gwent community than Necrotol. There's no one who's damaged the game more than Necrotol. He is single-handedly responsible for like 80% of the garbage changes the council has pushed through in the last 6 months. He's a piece of shit. I hope his computer explodes and he never plays Gwent again. I'm not exaggerating. I actually hope his computer stops working so that we never see his dumb fucking votes ever again. If there's one person most responsible for killing Gwent, it's Necrotol. Nausicaa Sergeant, -1 power. He's saying that's gonna happen. Casual small version like the casual voter revert, maybe. What would mean casual voter revert? Casual players don't like. I don't know. Slave draft +1 provision, likely casual voter. Stop saying casual voter as a diss. Round free +1 provision, likely. Okay. All right. Let's take the poll. Is this the poll? Which of the following cards would you support for power increase? Alright, Standard Bearer. But it has Grace. Like increasing its power. Oh no, it's not. This is boost for 1 each boosted enemy unit. It's a point slam card. That doesn't... There's not much counterplay. Like, how do you counterplay your units being boosted? Like, if you're playing an engine, like a Harmony deck or a Knights deck, like, your units are boosted. You're playing Swarm, everything you play is boosted automatically. Like, what the hell are you gonna do? Like, that's the whole point of your deck. You just have standard... What's gonna happen is if you make this too good, it becomes better off of Rune Mage. Like, if you add power to it, it becomes better off of Rune Mage and Diplo. And there'll be random-ass games where somebody will get it off a Rune Mage or Diplo or that's basically it as far as I know. And then it will just like win the game. And maybe that's fun to watch, but it's not fun to play at all. And fun to play supersedes fun to watch. So no. Serret? No. Like, does it deserve it? Yes. Do I want to see more Witcher Trio played? No. Fuck no. Why? Like, it's not interesting. There's nothing fun about Witcher Trio. Did he draw the cards in the right order? Then does he therefore get an extra 6 points from his trio? No. Like, and that entire deck is like just a lock spam deck. Albrecht? No. Isabel of Hag. Like, does this... Isabel? Is it Isabel? Isn't this comboed with like... This is just a mill card. I guess there's some clever things you can do with it. But I don't think what's holding this card back is the power. Like, if it was provision reduction, maybe. Maybe then it would fit in like an Aldrich deck more neatly. Like, what you do is... Sure, one way is to increase the floor, but like, increasing the floor of a card like this eliminates counterplay, right? Because now you can't kill it with a 5. And I hate that. Look. If you play this and I have a Rebuke, I should be able to stop it. I don't care it's 8 provisions. Like, so what? Not every 8 provision card should get to... Like, the whole point of an order is that the opponent should have a turn to counter it. So no, I don't like this. Because giving it... Like, if you reduce this by... So one way to increase a floor of a card that has a big gap between, like, floor and ceiling is to increase its power. But that's not okay in this case, or in the case of, like... Lieutenant Von Hurst that they power buffed, or a lot of the other like Fallen Knights, like a lot of those other cards that have a big spread, they buffed them by power, and that ended up being a bad idea. And I said it was going to be a bad idea when it first happened, and then 6 months later we reverted it because it was a fucking bad idea. Oh my god, I'm potatoes. I'm the future seeing potato. I'm a time traveling potato. It turns out if you make dumb changes, dumb things will happen. It's an abused last say card. Oh, does it work? Oh, if your opponent hand is not full, yeah. So you can also use it with Petrie's filter to just draw an extra card at the end of the game and get double last say. That's so dumb. Like, the fact that Shin even put that on his list tells you how little exposure he has to the variety of cards that are played on a ladder, or how little his chat is not... Like, my 35 viewers in my channel will have more experience and game knowledge than like 120 on Shin Miri's. Because a lot of those guys just like tune in because he's always positive and he's always nice. And like... You know, he wins a lot, and like many other good things. But what I'm saying is, like, they're not there to be like, oh man, let me see some creative and innovative gameplay that I've never seen before. Unless it's like a Shoop deck. Raging Bear? Really? Does Raging Bear need a power buff? Just the fact that this is even an option. This card sees plenty of play. What is the purpose of buffing that when there's a bunch of cards here that see 0 play? Like, this could have used the power buff, right? This is a classic card that like is interesting, gives some limited control and counterplay like movement options to has harmony. Like, this is an interesting card, but the floor is too low. And unlike the Wyvern or Drowner or whatever, where giving it a power would be detrimental to its thrive value, Harmony doesn't care. Harmony would love for this to be high 4 power, right? Because this only has 1 tag, so even with Scenario, it goes to... Right now, it only goes to 4. You would win more if you roped that much? No, Shin's a great player. He's a fantastic player. If he played competitively, he would be in all the tournaments. Okay? I don't think he would win a lot of them, right? And I don't even think he would say that he would beat the top players, but he would definitely be up there, right? I say Shin is like... It doesn't matter. He's skilled. And roping and methodically playing helps him win. And some of you, if you did that, you'd win more, sure. But that's not the only reason he wins. He wins because he's a good player. Artist? Why Spellbound Cultist? Really? You want to make this come down as a 6? I need to have 6 damage to remove this when this is often played in the same deck as Canute? And like... Why? Like, why? Ooh. None of this makes any fucking sense until you reverse engineer Shin's process, which is like, we're not seeing a lot of self-wound right now. And we don't want to buff Svalblood and Care Troll because those were considered OP cards. Let's buff a card that's played in self-wound, right? Because we don't want to buff cards that aren't seeing play. We want to buff cards that, because he's trying to buff the fucking archetype or buff a deck. And so he picks a card that's likely to be in those decks and he buffs that card. But that card already, see, this is a perfectly fine card. This card is absolutely balanced as it is, does not deserve a buff. But that's why it's here. Or they're trying to buff like self-harm. Like that's a Illyrio pet cause, with which I personally agree. Like non Sigvald self-wound, basically. Non-Sigvald, non-Svalblood self-wound. But I just don't. And like Boat Builders, no, stop trying to buff it. Like Boat Builders is one of those snowbally, like win more cards. And this only makes Hjalmar an even like bigger all or nothing card. This turn, like, it's already good card because it's a pirate, right? It doesn't need an extra power. Like what? Like for protection, they can already get points, and increasing its tempo is idiotic because there should be a downside to an engine card, right? Like a tempo card should play for more points on deploy than an engine card. Why? Because this is also 1 point a turn. If I play a Griffin, that plays for 8 or 7 points typically, right? At most, it's an 8. Usually, it's a 7 because it's eating a fruit that would have been 2 power, right? Like if you ate a Highwayman, then it's 8. But almost always, Griffin is 7 for 5. Then when you res it, it's a 9 for 5. Or when you Mimuna it, Mimuna becomes a 20 for 12 with 2 bodies, which is nice. It makes it very hard for someone to like it makes it, Mimuna is a really good card for bleeding or defending a bleed because it puts 2 big bodies on the board, and even if they Geralt 1 or Heatwave 1, you still come out ahead in tempo. But those cards have no point per turn value because they're not engines. This is an engine. So an engine card should have a downside. The downside of an engine card should be that it starts out slow, but in a long round, it plays for more points. That way, the round length determines, you have to think about the round length when playing this card. And when you're defending a bleed, it makes it kind of risky. If you play it early and they pass and you don't have the tempo, you might lose a card. But if you play it late, you get no value. So like there's a lot of decision-making, play and counterplay, and skillful like thought process that goes into the... But if you just give it a higher floor, more tempo, you're just eliminating that aspect and making it another good point slam card that has a bonus. Like, no. Heimei Skald. Scalds are good cards. The reason they don't see play isn't... Oh, no, not... I thought it was Heimei Protector. No. Heimei Skald absolutely does not... Well... So, Skald does deserve a buff. But... like, the rest of the discard package is already very viable, and it leads to tempo abuse, especially red coin abuse or blue coin erudite abuse decks that are, again, uninteractive, vomit points, shit out thinning, win because they drew their discard package in the right order, compass abusing, like, I don't have to make decisions about my deck building because I'll just pick the card that I need in each matchup. Well, why do I get to do that? Because I put all my cards in the trash can. So does it need more tempo? No, I don't think so. Only but for meta reasons. As a card, it does deserve 1 power. I just wouldn't prioritize this right now. So in going by the request here, which is to just say what you support, I'm gonna vote for it. But I would not want this to be in the next balance patch. Some other things have to change before this gets buffed. Temerian Drummer. So this is the classic like NR unit that boost the unit to the right by 1. And they're saying, like, this coming down as a 5 for 5, but 1 point a turn. Like, why is 5 for 5 and 1 point a turn bad? Especially when with synergies it becomes 2 points a turn. And even if you remove this, you only remove 4 of the points. So it wins in tempo against something that, like a Nat selection or whatever. The problem I have with making this 5 power is more because it's a buff to mutagenerator decks. And the fact that this protects an engine is a problem because of engine vomit and R decks with mutagenerator being really hard to deal with. Because every card they play in the mutagenerator round, if you didn't have Heatwave, gives them removal engines and carryover at the same time. And usually what you have to do if you don't have Heatwave in your hand when they play mutagen is you gotta like try and win on even or get so far ahead in tempo that you can tempo pass and end the round early. Because if you don't end the round early or win on even so you can bleed out their carryover, you end up losing, right? Like if you go a long round 1 and don't win on even, all you've done is let them get a boatload of carryover. So you need to get a big enough lead to be able to tempo pass, or you need to deny, or you need to win on even. It's one of those two things. You need that card advantage to compensate for all the points carryover that they have that you don't, and you have no way of getting because Mutagenerator is an NR only card. So, does this card deserve a buff? Maybe. Would I want it done? No. Griffin Witcher Ranger? Abso-fucking-lutely not. For the same exact reasons. Right? Does it deserve to have a higher floor? Probably. But what's it going to do? It's going to promote NR Mutagenerator decks. Could Kodak? I'm okay with this. Getting a buff. Because it seems like almost no play. And it's a 6... Like, all of the other 6 Provision Purify cards seem to get more play. Plus now with, like, agents, Secret Service agents. And also, Kutkudak is a knight. Which I think is neat. Do I want to buff NR Knights? No. Fuck no. But does this card deserve a buff? Yes. Nathaniel Postodi? Yes. So Postodi is one of those cards that like you never sees play. Oh, it's Pastodi. When this is boosted, it applies a random bleed. Now, this could be like this plus a drummer is a 3-point a turn engine in theory. But bleeding doesn't remove stuff. Opponent has time to counterplay it. And it's random. Again, I would have preferred that this go down to 6 provisions rather than get a power. Like, stop buffing the power of engine cards to make everything impossible to remove. Yes, that's going to make, like, 8 stick 1% more against pirates, but it will make it unkillable against any deck that isn't a control deck. Because decks that aren't control decks don't run a bunch of 6 or more removals willy-nilly, right? They usually have 1 or 2, like a tall punish and a lock, and then maybe a 5 or 1 or 2 5-point removals. Or maybe they can combo 2 things together to kill a 5 or 6. But it's very, like making Lieutenant Von Hurst requires 6, making this requires 6, making, like, so many cards requiring 6 damage to remove. It's a lazy way of making engine decks better. Like, what should have been done was would be nerfing dumb point slam cards or nerfing control cards, so that relative to them, engines get more value. Make the removing counterplay from, like, because they're thinking like just in front of their nose. They're like, I played that card, it got killed, it got no value, that's why it's bad. Let's make it not get killed, then it will have value. Like, you can just see the thought process, right? I played Fallen Knight, it died. If it didn't die, it would have gotten value. Therefore, the reason... No. Right? The solution is to think about the fundamental cause, which is that Point Slam is too good, and control is too readily available, and control decks get points because of cards that do damage and have a lot of points. Like, I don't know, Erendite, for example. Like, that is what makes those decks viable and strong, which makes cards like this unplayable. So nerf the cause and not the symptom. This should have been 6 provisions, not 6 power, but does it deserve? Is it one of the less bad things on this list? Yes. Morkbar got a power buff recently. Same. Yes, exactly. Exactly, Osman. That's exactly right. It's a heal 1. No, Spellblood Cultist is just a 1 point a turn engine. Unless you have armor or things that want to be damaged, which they do. So it's really a 2 point a turn engine. It's just it's a piggy that instead of requiring Sabbath requires being put next to a card like Melusine or Blue Boy or Armored Drakkar or a million and one other cards in Skellige that benefit from being damaged. Anything next to a protector, like anything with armor, anything with a shield, like anything that doesn't take damage, like Olgierd or Sigvald. Anything that you want to damage, like Canute. Anything that you want to damage, like the Bear Abomination thingies, the Berserkers, I think, the Fanatics, like there's a million cards. Oh, my bad. Yes. You're 100% right. This card deserves a power buff. Absolutely. 100%. I think this is one of the best options on this list. Okay, so the stuff I said like 10 minutes ago, that rant when I went on, some of my reasoning, most of my reasoning and logic is sound, but disregard because I was talking about the wrong card. Thank you, Capco. And Osman, wrong card. Okay, sorry, I wasn't. I was joking. He actually said he wasn't interested in playing all the top decks because he didn't have time. So I guess that's the reason. Of course, yeah. Okay, that must have been infuriating to watch me go on and on about the wrong card. If I don't notice something you're saying, you can always mention me. I get a little sound, and then I'm more likely to see it right away. All right. CRN. Like it's got a move, and it's an elf versus Moran, which is a dryad and has damage. Like, is a move not worth 2 points? Especially since you move and lock. Moran does not deserve. No! Look, why does this need to have more tempo than Doragary? Or like the same tempo as Doragary? Yeah, it's a dryad. That's a benefit, right? It triggers harmony. It fits in devotion. And it has optionality, right? I don't think. Plus, these are like mid-range deploy cards. And same thing with Elias, by the way. Like, yeah, knew there was an apostrophe. Like, this is an interesting card if you were to combine it with like mentors or the problem is Angus Bree Cree exists, so this becomes a dumb point slam card. This could play for 18 points. Or something. Maybe not 18, like, because you still have to destroy an allied unit. But like, people will just play this with Filavandral Frogs and then use this to banish a frog and spawn a 6 point. Like, it's 12 right now, it's a 12 for 9. If you played Angus, like, I could just make an Angus Filavandral deck with Elias. It'd be kind of silly point slam dumb nonsense. Here. Just so I don't forget, I'm gonna make the skeleton of that deck. And you guys tell me if this is a deck that you think should be promoted in the meta. So you play the 4 unique traps. Not sticky situation. Deception. Right? And then you play Mahakam Pass, because why not? No. Where's the other trap card? Like, it's... I'm already bored of it. Right? Like, I'm just going to put some filler cards in here so you can see how many provisions we have. I don't know. Like, you just, like, ick. Right? Like, ick. Just a bunch of point slam, like, where's frogs? You throw, like, random frogs in there. Like, nothing in here has counterplay by the opponent. How do you play Flutter from Council? No, you would need some sort of a hand buff cards. Right? In a deck full of elves, sure. Like, but these don't have to be all elves, right? Because you actually don't need any elves besides, like, Vanadane Simless, which you also don't need, right? Which, the only card in here that you need is Angus. And then Riordan seemed fine to play because you have, like he's a strong card if you're playing traps anyway, right? My point was, like, nothing about this involves a lot of counterplay from your opponent, or like cards that have to be, like, comboed together in interesting ways that then allow for counterplay. Like, it's all just point slam cards. Like, this is just a point slam card. Right? A point slam card that got better by playing a carryover card. As much as I think this card but, like, a power buff is not the way to do it. These mid-tier golds, they need provision buffs so that they can be more flexibly included in interesting decks rather than just the one deck they'll fit in. So that we have more options, more variety. Night Wraith? A power buff to Night Wraith is, I think, good. It wouldn't buff Tatterwing, and right now this is like a 7 for 4, but if you can consume it. It will become an 8 for 4 if you can consume it. with some like potentially interesting synergies by creating 4 bodies, but also 4 bodies can be a really bad downside. Like taking 5 spots for 8 points isn't very good. Or if you consume one, then it's 4 spots for 8 points. But I think its card like deserves a buff. I think Plumer deserves a buff. I'm tired of point slam decks with neutral removal cards. 0 brain power. Yes. Even if it's like not neutral, it's like, to me, the fact that it's neutral, tempo, or removal doesn't really bother me, because like some factions have those things and some factions don't, and the factions that do get to play those decks and the ones that don't. So neutral decks like kind of level the playing field a little bit and allow for more possibilities. But yeah, it's always the same stuff. It's value cards. Like a collection of value cards, and so you win because the sum total of the average points per card of my deck is more than the sum total of the average points per card of your deck, isn't interesting. It's just not. Geralt Ard again? No. Like, stop trying to make this card... Like, the card has a fundamental problem in that it solves no problems, and in that it can only move to range row. It's hyper conditional, and because it only damages them by 2, it's not, the payoff's not even worth it. Like, if you have 2 sentries on the board and then you play Geralt Ard, then the Geralt will play for like, even if you power buff it again, right? It would be like 5 plus 12, so 17 for 8. Like, really? Do we need to make it a 17 for... Like, if a card has to be made a 17 for 8 for it to be played, then it's not a good card. Neither is this. Why does this not get played? Because it's a Geralt that requires you having it in round 1. Because you only want to play it... Like, it's a removal card that you have to play early. Otherwise, it's just worse in every way. Like, if I have 5 cards in my hand, this is what? A 7 for 10? Discount Riptide? Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. Who are you, and why are you, like... Hold on, let me add a star to your name. I feel like I haven't seen your name a lot. Maybe I'm just a terrible streamer and I've forgotten who you are. But you seem... I like the stuff you say. Well, decks with good removal and neutral removal is even worse to play against. So, like, there are deck types that counter other deck types. Like, a removal deck should counter an engine deck. And it doesn't... If you're someone who really likes engine decks, and you end up hating removal cards because, like, they always mess up your plan, right? That's natural, but I personally don't have a problem with it if those removal cards come with the downside of having less tempo, right? So that there's a trade-off. If there's a trade-off, then it's okay. This is a bit too heavy of a trade-off because it makes it like a 10 provision card shouldn't just be like garbage a lot of the times, right? Because then that would require that it have a really big upside, and that's like also not good. Vanilla Siri. So is that this one? Making this harder to remove? I think for a 9 provision card, making it 8 on deploy, and then if not removed and opponent passes and it's not locked, then it gives the card back. I think that's totally fine. Geralt Axie, sure. Not because I want to promote this card or the decks that will play it, because this requires you having a bunch of allied witchers. So it's a neutral card that only works for like Skellige, right? And NR, maybe? Yeah, it only works for Skellige and NR. Because nobody in Nilfgaard's playing this. And nobody in Monsters is playing this ever. At least the old version that had a reset was like interesting. Like a Thrive deck used to play this as their Tall Punish, because it also proc Thrive, because it was 5 power. And you could use it on your own cards. So it was like just like how Spore can be used defensively, you could use it defensively. That was interesting. This is a 0 out of 10 rework. Like, the game did not need another Seize, especially a card that's not going to be in every deck. So, like, but the counterplay to it is to remove dead point slam Witchers, which means that, like, a deck that relies on this would just, like, auto lose to fucking Pirates and potentially Warriors or Siege and our Siege. We just auto lose to a lot of those decks. Because they happen to be removing shit accidentally from the board, not through any decision making, not because those are threats that need to be removed, but just because their cards do a bunch of collateral damage. Right? So I don't want to buff this card because I don't want to buff those decks. But the card itself is like has too low a floor. And giving it one more point, I think is okay. I don't think this is a card you should be playing for tempo. I think this is a card you should be playing for fun. So I would have preferred that this become a 9 provision card. Just like Philippa. Philippa's 3 power, 9 provisions now. This and conditional. That one requires spending coin. This one requires having Witchers. I think that would have been a much better route to go. King Cobra. No. It's a removal card that has a tempo cost. That's how removal cards should be. Sacrifice tempo to eliminate a threat. Johnny and Sarah, no. Their answer are lose cards, and if they make it more than 4 power, oh my god. Oh my god. People would just stick them in Simless decks, like Simless Alzer, not Alzer, but like Orb of Forgotten Seers decks, or in Stefan decks. And it's just not, like, people would put that shit behind, like, no. No. Madame Louisa, yeah. Madame Louisa is just terrible. Now, I'm not saying this would not be in my top 35 things to do in a council. But if it happened, I would never say revert it, right? So this card deserves it. It's not a priority, and it doesn't address the real cause of this being bad. What's the real cause of this being bad? It has 0 synergy with Off the Books Leader. It has 0 synergy with King of Beggars. And tribute cards have, like the entire fucking game was reworked for tribute to work with Off the Books Leader and King of Beggars. And this was never adjusted. This card should have just been reworked. Because making your next tribute be free means you want a bunch of tribute cards in your deck. But if you want a bunch of tribute cards in your deck, then you play Off the Books, which reduces that cost, making this -1 coin. And if you play a bunch, like, you want King of Beggars, and if this is free, if you use it to, like, on a free tribute card, then your King of Beggars isn't going to pop out or isn't going to give you value. And so it just has complete and total counter synergy with the leader and the build around card that this entire tag is meant to be played with. And even if you say, well, what about Golden Necker? Golden Necker is never going to play this. because it's unreliable. You don't know what your top card is going to be from Golden Necker top unit. And what if you get this from Golden Necker, like, and don't have a tribute? Like, this is not a card that lends itself to Golden Necker. So, no, you know what? Like, as much as I think that card, like, plays for 2 little points, I don't even think +1 power would make it better. So I'm just taking that out. Power decrease. See, this is a problem with this poll. People are going to read this and say, would I support a nerf to Calvite? Would I support a nerf to Cultists? Yeah, I hate Cultists. Nerf them. That doesn't mean they should be nerfed. Just because it's a card that loses a popularity contest doesn't mean that it should lose 1 power. This makes bullying King of Beggars not the end of the game. I mean, Decoy does a better job of that. Right? Or like any kind of hand fix card. I think that plays it. It's the only deck I think that plays that card. Even that deck doesn't always play it. And like doesn't really need to. But yeah, that's because it plays Jackpot, right? Like if you play Jackpot, sure. Yeah, it's like My fun in Gwent is to play non-meta for fun decks. Seeing the same 35 decks every game just sucks the fun out of it. You have a problem with people wanting to play the same thing as other people. Balance is not going to fix that. People will always, like, even if there was 100 viable decks, if there were 5 of those that were 1% better, everybody would play those same 5 decks. Your problem is with human nature. King Foltest? Yeah, I'm always in favor of nerfing Foltest. Because he should be answerable. And he should not exist. He's like... Because he's a carryover engine. I hate carryover engines. I hate Istrid. I hate King Foltest. I hate those guys that, like, every 2 turns you click on them. I hate Mutagenerator. Like, I'm fine with a carryover card, right? You play it because then it has a set amount of carryover it gives you, and you can balance around that. But when you have a carryover engine, you have to make it strong enough to be worth playing against decks that, like, can remove it or lock it or yoink it. But then if you do that so that it actually ever gets played, it becomes suffocatingly strong against any deck that happens to not have the answer for it. If I'm against a Military deck and they drop Istrid and I can't answer, I might as well just, like... Unless my deck is really good against them, I might as well just go next. Right? Like... Blood Money? Losing in round 3, finishing golden for free Salamander, decoy to trigger Salamander, and Puzzle Box. That build doesn't even run Poison Bros? Oh, interesting. Is it just a remove everything kind of play? So you need Last Say? Sounds like a fun meme deck. And you also have to thin to, like, 3, or at least... Yeah, you have to thin to 3, or at least 1 unit, 1 special, and... I guess you could have more than 1 artifact, but... You know, that kind of deck can really be messed with. Yeah, Garmin. Okay, that makes sense. There have been a number of, like, Centrion's done some too. There's just been a lot of decoy Salamander. It's fun. If I ever played Salamander, I would play that, because then at least it's kind of guaranteed to go off. Right? Donimir and our defender, assuming China votes commander plus 1 power. I mean, this has a shield? But I really hate putting it in muzzle and slave 6 range. I really do. Like, you have this card and you're against NR. If it's 6 power, you should just discard it. Not discard it, because they still have to leader it, but... On the other hand, I've never met an NR deck that played a defended that I thought wasn't cancer. So we'll vote for this. Arrakis Queen, why? What? Why? Why is that even on the list? Jesus Christ. Harpy Egg? You guys buffed it. It was Lirio's suggestion. It was a good suggestion. You want to nerf something? Nerf Harpy. Nerf Harpy by 1 power or something. Holy crap. Why nerf the egg? Regis Bloodlust. Is that the 17 power one? I mean, 17 is already pretty low for, like, all the... Like, I hate it when people play this against me. But it's, like, not... Like, or when they played from Compass. But it's almost, like, not... Like, you'd be kind of killing the card if you make it any less. Right? Is that true? Why not nerf Yalmar's power? Like, why does this need to be 10 power? Why does Riptide have to be 9, but this gets to be 10? Draw could use +1 power. Heimdall could use +1 power. Those are cards you buff by power, okay? Even this could use +1 power. Like these things, it's okay to give them 1 more point. This card should just be put in the trash. Along with this. 13 provision Morva. This makes no sense. Regis was 13, this was 12. That made some sense. And Regis was changed to 12. Okay, fine. Because Late Guardian got added to the game, and lots of other finishers that played for more points than Regis. But this being 13 is so dumb. Made no sense. Not like exactly a big fan of the card. I like the old version better. I just think the old version should have been made cheaper. And beast, some of the bronze beasts could have been buffed, and then it would have been a very interesting card. Playable in like you could play Death Wish with Plague Maiden and other things, and play this to like for like, you know, 6+9 or whatever. That would have been an interesting card at 7 provisions. Because it used to be 8. Then it got like stolen and Diablo got it to Alpha Werewolf, and it's just garbage and no one ever plays it. Oh, really old? I don't know. That sounds like if Morva did a lock, that's before my time. The Morva I remember just boosted all allied beasts by 1, and it would affect both rows. So if you filled your board with beasts, which could be wrath, but could be other stuff, it was like a Bone Talisman on a stick, conditional. Assuming everything you play was a beast. So it was interesting. It was a nice like beast swarm finisher card. Or you could do Caranthir, Plague Maiden, and then Plague Maiden, and then play Morvad. Before Homecoming? Okay. Then yeah, I didn't play then. I started around like the Merchants of Ophir expansion. Vabiorn -1 power? No, because I think 2 power is the right amount of tempo for these tutor cards. I think that like this is one of those changes that's like only people only advocate for this because people only advocate for this because like pirate decks have too much tempo or something. Because Abordage got buffed, right? Because like On-Crate Raider got buffed. Because Demon Smugglers got buffed. Most of these changes were garbage changes suggested by Necrotal, by the way. Demon Smugglers might be okay where they are if Freya's Blessing gets nerfed. So like, or like Raiding Fleet also got provision buffed. Yeah, like a million specials got buffed, and then this also got buffed. I don't think we need to undo this. I think we need to just nerf those specials. Like Abordage needs to be 6. It thins. Why is it cheaper than Secret Service, which is already an amazing card? It does damage and plays a card and draws a card. Like, that's a fucking amazing card. So what if it has Bloodthirst? That condition is easy. People just didn't know how to play it properly. It's one of those things that you, like, potentially, like, if you're CDPR, you might provision buff it. So people learn to play it, and then once people have learned how to play it, like Illusionist, you undo the buff. So this is another, like, that's why I actually didn't mind the Illusionist buff. I think Illusionist was too much tempo, and I think Illusionist, the season that it was, like, the season before it got buffed to 4 power, it was, the top players were already playing it in Assimilate with Truffle. It just hadn't caught on yet, and then CDPR buffed it, and it was unnecessary. It would have gotten more play at 3 power if they had just waited. But they never understood the game anyway. What deck do I enjoy? I like vampires, but like old school vampires. Not Regis vamps, like vampires where you didn't feel you had to apply a bleed every turn. Where bleed was something you did conditionally and to synergize with your cards. Not for your like cheesy win con. Corrupted Flaminica. Sure, man. That's fine. Elder Bear to nerf verification on own artifact and buff it on enemy artifact? Wait, why? It just says boosted by 4. It doesn't set the power. Nerf verification on own artifact. Oh, because it's right now it's -6 and it would make it -5. And right now it's a 10 for 5, it would make it a 9 for 5. Yeah. I like this change. Alright. Of all these changes, 1, I like this. I like this. 2, I like this. 3, I like this. 4, I like this. And 5. Are some cards good with devotion and some are pointless? I don't understand what you're asking. Like, what do you mean pointless? Give me examples. Oh, it's already there. I must have like replaced something that was already there. Nerfing Elder Bear does make it unplayable by itself, but just Meteor Shower by 1 power? I guess. Ice Companions? No. I use this with Cyclops and I use it to proc Thrive. Why do you want to nerf Companions? What the hell? Companions are the consistency cards. Why would you nerf this? This should go back to 7 provisions. Like, Devotion as a tag sucks. You can tell by the emote that the word Devotion turns into. It's a dumb fucking idea. I've explained this a million times. In fact, do we even have a clip? No. I really, like, I don't want to get sidetracked into that discussion right now. I want to finish what we're doing here. Ask me some other time if you want, and I'll explain why Devotion is a bad design. You should just ignore that Devotion exists and delete it from the game. More bad changes have been done in the name of Devotion than anything else. Devotion is responsible for more deaths than religion. Not really, but I hate Devotion. Renfree power decrease? It's already 4, man. That's like, you should be able to actually play it. Like, it shouldn't be less tempo than a fucking squirrel. So no. Vanadane, no. Angus, no. Those cards are fine at 6. Don't want to make them unplayable. Rod Tosser? No. Just because you don't like a card doesn't mean it deserves a power nerf. What the fuck? No. Yes. Yes. Absolutely yes. Karak Marine, where the fuck are you? I love that I can move stuff from here to here. This is by far, like, the stupidest change in the last council. Demoban? Sure, why not? That card plays for too much tempo. It should be like Henselt. It should be 3 power. Goblin? No. Because it makes it so you don't want to actually benefit from it and like use the card properly. When you nerf Spellblood's power, what you're doing is you're saying play it like a point slam card. Because how many turns this lasts, because it damages itself as well as everything else, if you make it, if it's like starts at 8, you trigger it twice, then it's like already gonna get parasited, or right? Like you trigger it 3 times, it gets rebuked. No, like Spellblood should counter Symbiosis and should be allowed to exist on the board for more than 1 turn, because opponent decided not to play Heatwave or a Tall Punish. Like a 13 provision card should require a 10 provision card to answer, not a 6 provision card. I know that it would still get value, but like I don't like it where cards are reduced to their deploy. Too much of Gwent is only like at any high rating. It's just what's the floor? What's the floor of this card? Every card playing for its floor is not interesting. Cards interacting with each other, living on the board, and then playing for more points is more interesting. Which would you support for a provision increase? Is Philavandrel here? No, of course not. Even though it's one of the most played cards in Scoia'tael, that should be provision nerfed 100%, and it's not here at all. Why? And they want to provision nerf Megascope or Sigvald or Hivemind? I'm getting mad. Cohen? If you provision nerf Cohen, it would just buff it for AA. Like, why? No, that would be a power nerf. But like, why do you want to provision nerf Cohen? Like, yeah, it's a dumb card, but if you want to nerf it by power. Or nerf AA, really. That's the real problem. Or nerf Priestess. That's also the real problem. Making Donimir 11 provisions is not the answer. Neither Foltest. I disagree. Frog Mating Season? With Shaping Nature buff? What Shaping Nature buff? Because this was made to 8 provisions? So what? What does that have to do with Frog Mating Season? To give, like, Philavandrel 8 more options? No! Stop trying to make Philavandrel better! Philavandrel should be nerfed! And it shouldn't just be playable in hand buff only. Like, don't make the good stuff be at 8 provisions so it doesn't get played. Just make Philavandrel cost what it should. Like, it's a really strong card. It's getting played now. Fine, make it expensive. It's a point slam card that has versatility, flexibility, and payoff. And I'm fine with all of those things because it's an iconic card. It should be impactful and strong and blah, blah, blah. But make it cost the same as a Henselt or a Simlis or something. It's not quite at their level. It doesn't play for as many points, so a little less. I was going to say it should cost the same as Morvad, but Morvad's 13 provisions now. Like, Morvad can be Tall Punish. How do you answer Philavandrel? Aside from Svalblood, I don't know of anything that, like, even Svalblood doesn't really benefit, because you're not even removed. I mean, doesn't matter. Moving on. Glusty, maybe. Even then, it's like opponent's fault for playing it against you. Or playing it at a bad time, if it benefits your Glusty. Archbane. The location? Why? It's already 11. Iced? Why? Like, why are you just putting a bunch of cards that people hate? Like, you guys should be better than this. Lirio wrote an article about how people hate vote in the council. And you're putting all the hate vote options on there. I understand that this is like an opinion survey to see if people would vote for these or not. But why would these ever be an option? Just never make them an option. Don't kill cards. Just because people hate them. Unicorn or Kyrenex? The fuck? Why is unicorns being Golden Necker a bad thing? Like, Golden Necker wants to thin. It's already bad enough that you have to have one or the other in your hand before you can play Golden Necker. That's enough of a requirement. And Golden Necker is 11 provisions now. Why do we want to nerf it? Just because you see a combo played a lot and it's neutral doesn't mean it's bad and should be nerfed. Ah, it's making me mad. Like, such uninspired fucking choices here. Holy shit. Like, every fucking defender again? Skyrdal. You want to make Skyrdal even more powerful than it is? It's already at 12 for 8. But Riptide being an 11 for 9 is too good. But Skyrdal should be a 12 for 8. They want to make it a 14 for 9. What the fuck? Why? Because it's a Skellige card or because it's Devotion? Which is it, Shin? Which of your two idiotic biases is the reason this should be a fucking option ever? Morntart? Wow. That card played for a lot of points. I don't like it. That card made me die. See, that card is very big and has a big number. I don't like this card because I don't know how to counter something that doesn't play like other decks. It's fine. It's not OP. Let it be. Just because it's a deck you don't want to play or play against doesn't mean you should nerf it. For fuck's sake, this isn't your personal, like... It's a game that other people play. Do you not understand that? Am I crazy? Like, support for provision decrease. Select all that apply. Provision decrease. Vilgefort's Renegade? No. Doedric? The Renegade is the one that puts a card in your graveyard. This is played in a lot of cheesy decks. You can power buff this if you want, but I'll never support a provision buff. Doedric provision buff. Provision decrease. 7? I mean, Istrid is 6, so you could argue this is 7. But this is one of those cards, it's 8 power, so it's really hard to remove. I know it's got a range order, but like that just means if you're against Scoia'tael or monsters, they can move it. Most other factions don't move stuff. I know Skellige has like the boats that move stuff, and I know sometimes Reaver decks play the Scout that can move enemy cards too. But movement is not a reliable, like, it's not very common. Like, having movement be the only counter to a card is not good for the game because not every faction can have that option. So it makes a card be really bad into some matchups and oppressive in other matchups. So no, don't buff it. Letho? No. Letho is... It's a Witcher trio buff. Like, is that card weak? Yes. Should it be buffed? No. Helvide? Helvide is 10, make it 9? Yes, I support that. But Firestorm's gotten a lot of other unnecessary buffs, so I'm not sure. Forest Protector? No, you buff Forest Protector by nerfing Filavandrel. This card was in literally every Symbiosis deck until you morons made Filavandrel be auto-include instead. And so the reason this isn't played is because Filavandrel's too fucking good. You don't need to buff this, which was already an auto-include card in Symbiosis, to make it played. You just nerf the card that replaced it. Filavandrel, don't forget, used to be 4 power. 5 power made it good. Now it needs a provision nerf. Sacred Flame, sure, you can make that 7 provisions, I don't care. Louisa, yes. Again, I would never prioritize this, but it's fine. Siggy Reuven. Make it playable in Golden Egg or Jackpot? Sure, it's kind of a point slam card I wouldn't prioritize. Imki, yes. Imki, absolutely. Imki could get a provision buff and a power buff. Brute? No, because if you give Bounty more provisions, it just play more neutral removal cards, and that's not good. Eliminates the... like, you can power buff Brute if you want. Dimeridium Shackles? Fuck no. A 4 provision lock that anybody can play? No. 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 Mad Kian? Sure. That card sucks. Kira? No. Kira is a bad card. Like a design nightmare. You like the 4 power? No. Just make Philavandrel 12. Fill back to 4 power again means it would just not ever get played again outside of like some cheesy decks. Frogs to 8 isn't the worst thing, but Phila to 12 would be better. And Frogs to 8 also nerfs movement when the problem is Philavandrel. And even if you move, like, Philavandrel into Frogs may be the thing people play, but people would still play Philavandrel if it wasn't for Frogs being at 7. If Frogs were 8, people would still, like, play Philavandrel every deck because it's like a Lydia that plays for more points. And doesn't break, and has more flexibility, and is predictable, and has synergy with other cards, and fits in Devotion, and. Right? Like, it gives you a body for Frogs. Like, that's another reason why it's good. It has synergy with Harvest, which got buffed, and Circle of Life, which also got buffed. Like, 16 things got buffed. One of them was Frogs. And a lot of those other things we're seeing play even before the buff. So, no, don't nerf the one card in that deck that actually deserved the buff. In that list. Prison Pendant also needs double Frogs. Prison does not need double Frogs. Prison Pendant needs round control. Prison Pendant is perfect. If you land Prison Pendant and you land Frogs, you are getting infinity points anyway. You're perfectly happy. Double Frogs is unnecessary for Prison Pendant. And it's just a win more type, like bullshit. Doesn't need it to be viable. I'd rather play Prison Pendant in Golden Necker deck anyway. Kira Metz, no. Carlo Veris. It's a conditional removal card, kind of like Riptide. So I think it belongs at the 9 provision marker with like Vilgefortz and other cards. I still wouldn't play it, but I think it deserves to be a 9. Like it from a. You see how it's different? I'm not like, oh, we need to buff Self-Wound. Let's buff this card that's played in that deck a lot. I'm thinking cohesively about the entire like slew of cards and what cards get to be at 10, what cards get to be at 9. Like Heatwave is at 10, right? Like whereas COC is 9. Like Carlo Veris is a lot more like COC than it's like Heatwave or Geralt. Piquant. Why do we want to provision buff Piquant? Are we trying to buff Military for no reason? Because that's the only deck that plays it. Free Company. If it stays at 6 power, I'm fine with it being 9 provisions. Philippa to 8? It's blind. It's the one that damages everything, right? Oh, sorry. To 10? No. I mean, it just doesn't have any synergy with anything else. But it's kind of aggressive in specific matchups. The fact that it can remove a 4, a 3, a 2, but like sometimes it like RNG high rolls too. It deserves the provision buff, I think. Because it's like 2 tempo less than a Geralt and it like removes like whatever. So I wouldn't vote for it. Like I wouldn't prioritize it, but I would never say revert it. Like if this went through, I would not. So everything that I've checked is stuff that I would like not revert if it got nerfed. Provision increase, battle stations. Sorry, my bad. That's the one that I support nerfing because it's just too good. Too much tempo and thinning and engine deploy all in one. It's like Golden Necker without any of the requirements, and better because it's a tactic. So like, it's got a million types. It would be like if Golden Necker was an organic card. That's what Battle Stations is. It's like if Golden Necker was an organic or a nature card. Think of it like that, or a tactic. Because those are special categories that have or alchemy that have lots of synergy with in those factions. And Battle Stations is that. It's that strong. Crow Messenger. You want a provision decrease Crow Messenger? The fuck? Are you kidding me? Inspirational Ballad. Is that the one that buffs 4 things? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't think it does anything, but some people will have fun with it, so fine. She Who Knows is too expensive. I agree. It's too shitty for what it is. Does it make Relic good at the thing that it's good at, which is like bleeding in round 2 and tempo abusing? Yes. But the card sees no play. It's a cornerstone card. Nobody even plays it in Relic. Nobody good. And deserves to be playable. It's a 13 fucking provision card. Or it will be 12. So, like, sure. That doesn't really address the problems with it. So I wouldn't prioritize it, but like I would never say revert. Armored Arrakis. Yes. So the reason Armored Arrakis deserves a buff, or like a good reason to buff it, isn't because at 7 provisions anybody with a brain is going to play it. No. But it has a lock on deploy, which means if you can summon it, it doesn't lock itself. Which means it's actually playable. You still have to fill the fucking row, right? But you don't have to start with an empty row and within 3 turns get to a full row. Like, who came up with that, like, obnoxious condition? My God, they really hate, like, they're like, if you have an empty row and within 3 turns you fill it up and your opponent is AFK, asleep, or disconnected and the cards are going to the trash can, then it plays as a 12 for fucking 8? Really? When Axel was an 11 for 7? Like, the same people, like, this was a rework after Axel was added to the game. Jesus, like, they really hated monsters. They really did. Or Shinmiri hates monsters and Shin was the only person they talked to. I don't know. I think Shin gets a little bit of undeserved hatred from me because he, like, my 2 favorite factions are Monsters and Syndicate, and they're probably his 2 least favorite factions. And he loves mid-range defensive play. I like engine combo decks. He hates playing against engine combo, or he plays playing against combo decks. He doesn't like playing engine decks because, like, they just get removed unless he can cheat in some way and guarantee that they get on the board. And he was like the only content creator that had any kind of influence on CDPR for a long time. And a lot of the things that CDPR did happened to philosophically match kind of what I think Shinmiri likes. And so I kind of blame him for some of it, even though he probably doesn't deserve any of the blame at all. It's CDPR's fault. Temerian Drummer. 4 provisions? I am more supportive of a provision buff to Drummer than a power buff. I still wouldn't put it in there because I don't think it needs to happen. And Sheldon Skag. Sheldon's already very good in hand buff. Nobody's not playing it in hand buff. So why are you doing that? Like, why are you buffing it? This is a card that, like, is amazing if it starts in your hand and is garbage if it doesn't. That's the problem with it. You could buff it by power to increase its floor. I would support that. If this was by twice the amount Sheldon's boosted, that would be cool. Because then you could play like Eisengroup's Council into Sheldon, and then it would play as a 10 for 8. That would be neat. But because hand buff exists, even then, because it would triple the amount of boost on it, in theory. Assuming there's a target tall enough. I still think that would be maybe okay. I just don't think it needs a buff. Ciaran, Morin, no. Why are we trying to make these 5 provision? Why are these the cards that are like in 2 categories for Scoia'tael? Really? Are 6 provision locks just not good enough? They have to be 5 provisions? Like, they're intent on buffing these 2 cards because they're not as... Devotion cards should be better than neutral versions. No! Then what's the point of those neutral cards at all? Like, Devotion is its own... Like being a faction card means it triggers Harmony. Means it, like, doesn't disrupt Devotion. Those are benefits. Those are perks. A faction card should not always be better than the neutral version. The neutral version has downsides by virtue of it being a fucking neutral card in the first place. So you can't play with Isengrim Council. You can't play it with Call of the Forest. You can't play it and have Oak Critters in your deck. You can't play it and have Popko on the board. You can't play it to trigger Harmony. Like, there's a million downsides to them already. So many things say non-neutral in them. You don't need to make every, like, faction-specific version of a card unconditionally and always better than the neutral equivalent of it. There should be, like, it should be a choice. Sometimes I want to play Doragary in my Patch of the Fury deck. Sometimes I want to play the other card. Like, yeah, it's the move and lock card. Hey, Ratchet. Vryhead Vanguard. No! This card already plays for 1,000,000 points sometimes. And, like, this is like the dwarf that plays boost by the number of dwarves on the row. No. And it's like Griffin Witcher Ranger. Like, why are we buffing all those point slam cards that, like, punish the opponent for not having deleted everything you have on the board? You're making your decks worse into the matchups they're already worse against, and better into the matchups they're already good against. No, it just makes for more polarized matchups buffing that card. I disagree. And, like, why are we trying to buff 4P elves? And if we are, like, aren't we buffing cards like this? Like, making this a 9 for 4 if you have 2 trap, because that would be toxic. It's just a badly designed card. You could buff this. If you want to buff a bronze elf, you can buff this. You could even buff this, because then it would be like a 7 or a 6, right? So this got buffed and still sees no play, so you could buff that. And you could buff this. And they could have a floor of 7. 7 for 5 plus. If you have another card that moves it, it would be an extra 2 points per move. Yeah, this could you could buff this. These cards suffer from, like, the Borsodi Brothers, except worse effect. Because the Borsodi Brothers effect works if you played one. If you got one in round 1, you get to play it, and then you have the other one to play it later. This one requires that they both be on the board and not be removed. Like, the condition is too hard. I thought it would be playable at 5 power and 6 provisions. It hasn't seen much play, but I think it's fine. I think the problem is there's not a deck that they fit well into, and somebody could make one. It just hasn't, like... I would love for a Golden Necker Harmony deck to be viable, It's just that these cards are like answer cards, kind of. So you kind of want to be able to play them when you want to play them. Yeah, they do have a really great heist bounce. Exactly. Like, but that's okay because it's not carryover abuse the way that Vanadane and Angus are with heist, right? I'm okay with heist being used on these. Because you can remove them. They're 5 power. So that's another reason you should never power buff these further. This card just makes me sad every time I see it. Tori used to be a playable card. Darn is buffing what? Dryhead Vanguard? Yeah. This is what happens when, like, non-designers get involved in design things. Watcher of the Valley? Oh, that's good. I don't know much about Doran's other recommendations, but Doran's a deck builder. And in my experience, deck builders have better opinions on balance. Like, I've always enjoyed Lirio's opinions more than Shinmiri's, right? Puzzles, and Miyamon's, like, more than Paja's and Kerpitan's or whatever. Like, because deck builders understand, like, what's preventing them from playing a card. Not saying Kerp is not a deck builder or Paja isn't a deck builder either. Those are probably not good examples. They've made lots of decks. But they don't usually invent, like, new unorthodox decks. They usually, like, perfect an existing idea. Right? Not gonna like the rest? Okay. Link me. Yarpen is the last one. My first reaction is no, because didn't this already get buffed? I saw Shin was playing this. Was this not good? Maybe it's still too expensive at 9? Because it's a 9 for 9. And then every time he gets armor. Which, how would this get armor? What things give armor? There's Armor's Workshop that gives 2. There's Barclay that gives 1. Tempering gives 2. Obviously, Chariots are 1 per turn, but generally Chariots are 1 per turn on any card, and those points belong to Chariot, not this. So the real problem with this card is that there's not a lot of other cards that synergize with it. But it's fine. You can usually disrupt those, aside from Simless Armor's Workshop, or Tempering from a Hakam Pass, or Tempering from Leader. But I'm okay with all that. I'm okay with it, I think. Again, we're not buffing its power or tempo. We're just reducing its provisions. Not that dwarves really need provisions. They got so many provision buffs. They could just be playing whatever the hell they want at this point. But so yeah, those are the ones I would not. Everything I've checked in this list are things that I would not revert. Doesn't mean I think you should do these, but if these went through, I would not advocate reversing them. So Sawblood Cultist, Heimei Skull, Temerian Drummer. Since we have the provision option, I'm going to remove that, because I'd much rather make these 4P. I think a 1 point a turn, 4 provision, 4 for 4 is good. It's a 5 for 4, and then 1 point per turn. So it's still better than, like, a lot of the monster 4P engines. And it's better than that elf. But that elf, when it's played, is usually played in an elf's deck, so it can proc once a turn at least. So I think it's fine to make this a 4 for 4 because it can be removed. But oh, we give it a power buff. No. Yeah. Don't power buff it. Provision buff it. So that it can be removed, but it's okay if it's removed because it was a 4P card. We are not reverting. I haven't suggested it. I haven't put together my council suggestions. And also, I don't have the power to revert anything. what I do with my council suggestions nowadays is I just put out what I think are good ideas, and I hope that other people adopt them. I don't have enough influence. I never did, even when I was like the #1 streamer in Gwent. My votes never really had much of an impact. But like last season, this is what I suggested. I suggested Cleaver get 1 power and that Muscle lose 1 power. I suggested Madman Lugos gain 1 power because it's a good card, but sometimes plays for very little. He's good for answering stuff, but like when he bricks bad. Like it feels terrible for it to be a 4 for 8. So 5 for 8, you know. Then and as long as you have like 2 damage units, it plays okay, and 3 it plays better, and if it's answering something, then it's worth it. Right? Cleaver's muscle because Novi Justice and Cleaver and like this card just never needed to be buffed. Right? What needed to be buffed was some of those other cards, and they did get buffed. Cleaver didn't get buffed, but I'm saying it should get buffed. Novi Justice used to be 10 provisions. It's 9 provisions now, right? And Cleaver also indirectly got buffed with the Mercenary Contract, Furco, Reuven's Treasure double buff. Like, a lot of crime cards, a lot of intimidation, synergistic cards got buffed. The fact that you can Merc Contract into Furco, into Reuven's Treasure and play 2 crimes. No, you can't do that. If you Furco into Damnation into Reuven's Treasure, then you play like a lot of crimes in 1 turn. And that enhances Cleaver's value. But Cleaver has to live, so give it +1 power. So it doesn't die to a melee boat. Like, opponent played a 5p card, your 11p card is now useless? Really? Especially since Syndicate has, like... You could play that 1 movement card, but, like... Jesus Christ. Like, that's not a card that you're going to see in Syndicate decks. Maybe in off the books, but never in line pockets. I advocated nerfing Freya's Blessing because it's a Necromancy that's a bronze that's replayable multiple times. Why is it 5p? Why is a way, way, way better Necromancy 2 provisions less? Necromancy is already really annoying in almost every deck that plays it, and is very strong at 7p, is perfectly fine, or perfectly playable. People play in lots of decks. Why does Freya's need to be 5? This can go to 6. War of Clans is 6. Why is Freya's 5? Back when this had, like... Yeah. Also, Abordage... Like, Magni can only play specials. This does damage and plays a unit that does damage, which can be comboed for massive reach. Right? If you Abordage into a Raider, that Raider often gets Zeal because you added Bloodthirst, or because you did 2 damage, it's like 4 damage and 7 points. Like, +1 thinning. Like, 11 and 1 thinning for 5p, like 11 tempo and 1 thinning for a 5p card that played another 5p card is basically old Blightmaker levels of garbage, except it's removal instead of just tempo. Like, it's not okay. Alright? Like, and Philavandrel, it's in every fucking deck. It's in Symbiosis, it's in Shiru, it's in Movement, it's in... every Scoia'tael plays Philavandrel. Every Renfree deck, every non-Renfree deck. Like, Philavandrel is more common than Simless was. And I don't want to power nerf it to make it not be played again. But I think a provision nerf is reasonable for how many points it plays. It should cost you a rebuke or something. Like, it should cost you something. Especially since Harvest is cheaper now too. So like, even as a unboosted version, you can get Backup Plan, Rebuke, Harvest. Those are all really good options. Hey Ryan. All right, Imlerith. Imlerith should be the same provisions. And why was this not on Shinmiri Lirio's list? I don't understand. Or Pugo. Or Maruna. Like, these three cards, like, why are they not anybody's list? They all deserve a buff. They all see almost no play. They all have some sort of interesting interaction. Imlerith can put a card in the graveyard for Mamuna or for Incubus. Imlerith can draw a card, has synergy with Naglfar. And it's the same tempo as Knickers for one more provision. It's less tempo than Eudora or Knickers, and those cards pop out the deck. This you have to play, and you have to put a card from your hand into your graveyard, a unit, for it to play for any points. Or not for it to play for any tempo. The only argument is that, like, oh, even at 8 provisions, it won't see play. I'll play it. And if it needs another buff, then let's do that too. But let's start with a provision buff, because a power buff will not at all make it playable. So let's give it a provision buff first, and then if it's not... But it adds consistency and fitting to a faction that has less than anybody else in that department. By a mile. Like, why not? And Pugo, a great sword that's a 6 provision card, is already like 11, right? Like, Jotun is the more comparable card. It's 13 power, 6 provisions, right? No, not Jotun. The Skellige one. What's the Skellige one? The tall Skellige card. The damage itself if it's the tallest unit. Yuta. Yuta is a 13 for 6. This is an 8 for 7. If you have a fruit on the board, or if it hits a 1 somehow, right? Then it's a 10 for 7. What the fuck? Like, what the actual fuck? Like justify any of this for me. Like, on what planet is Pugo worth 11? Like, should be 7 provisions. The only argument for it being 7 is for Penitent, and like, it's fine. You know, we'll find other uses for Penitent. So I don't think these recommendations that I have really changed. I would just replace Henry with Karak Marine. These other ones that, like, Shin's or were in Shin and Lirio survey, I support. So let me see which of their stuff I would support. Like, I like. I'm gonna put the ones that I like in here. Armored Arrakis. Could actually make a card that sees 0 play, potentially see some play after we buff Penitent. Imki. Imki's a good change. And Helvi. Let's add an image. This is what I recommended. That's fine. Add image. So We're looking at provision increase. Again, these are things that are in Lirio and Shin's counts survey that I like. Provision nerfing. Like, does Skellige need the ability to remove a 7 with a unit that comes with tempo? Like, why? I don't understand the logic behind this at all. Abordage. It was there. I didn't miss it. Oh, I didn't see it last time. That's why you were asking, Hatham. I just literally missed it. Provision nerfing Vanadane? Vanadane almost sees no play. Like, I haven't seen much Vanadane recently. Is there anything else somebody wants to argue? Like, Frog Race is the one I hate less than the other ones on this list. Like, I'm all about nerfing Skjordal. I just don't think it should be followed by 1 power buff. I think +1 provision, +1 power would be a buff to the card. Because they have X amount of removals, and then you have your next card stick after they've used all of them. Giving this more removal power means that one doesn't stick. And that's usually the difference in that matchup when I play an engine deck against a Warriors deck. Like, I play 8 things, they kill 8 things, and then my 9th thing lives, and I can win with that. But letting them kill 9 things instead of 8 means I only have 1 card, and that's not good. I will never win it. Win that. You're only allowed to kill 90% of my people, not 100% of my people. That's 1 bridge too far. Slave driver. Sure. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it blank because I'm just saying the ones that I don't disagree with. And those are the ones I don't disagree with, or that I like. Sorry. So put that in here. From Shin and Lirio's survey, these are the changes in that list that I support. And then, what are my votes for this month? Like, I support those changes. They're just not high priority. What is my high priority? I still think it's this and this. And I still think Madman Lugos deserves a buff. He deserves a buff more than Skjordal deserves a buff. Jesus. And She-Troll, like, being harder to kill, having a higher floor is really important. Like, this should not be worse than... Like, a Ran Warrior is easier to kill than this, and this is Rollock. What the actual fuck? It requires setup. Like, you have to have something on the board that you can instantly, like, destroy or consume the turn that this is played. So, like, whether it's a Slizzard or a Rat King or use a leader charge or something, like, that's insane. For a 9 provision card to have such a weird, like, such a low floor unless you use so many other resources. And while this isn't as high a priority for me, I still think it's correct. In fact, I think I would move Philavandrel even higher this month. Just because I see less of these decks than I do this. And I still think Imlerith is a correct buff. I still think that Miruna should be 8 provisions. It's too expensive at 9. For how conditional it is and the fact that it's random. So it should be more like a card that you play for points, not as a specific answer to something. And with that in mind, it's going to be worth less. Um, but it is a relic, and that is interesting to me as someone who likes like relic, Death Wish, fusion decks that combine a couple of classic archetypes in one faction. So the ones that are in the 3-star, you're not gonna talk me out of. But I can be talked out of the 1-star choices in each category. Or if you have a really good suggestion, the 2-star. So let me okay. Sorry, I was covering the screen. I think yes, I do want Darn votes. But before we go into those, does anybody have any suggestions? Anything that, like, nominate anything, and if I agree with it, I'll put it in here and I'll change my votes. Not one of the ones from Shin that we've looked at. Cleaver Muscle. Because nobody actually plays this in a deck directly, right, Bensi? This is only played from Cleaver or from Novigrad Injustice. Cleaver being a 5/4 spender is still decent, considering it doesn't go, like, it goes wide, right? And these guys have shields, which means that they're worth 6 points against things that have damage or whatever. It also means that, like, if somebody plays Cleaver, you can answer it with Riptide or COC. Right now, you can't. Like, if somebody opens Cleaver, right? And I think, considering he, like, plays for coins and spawn stuff, and as an engine, having him be answerable by one of those cards is fine. I think that he dies too easily. And then I think that, like, especially with Sesame, he plays for too many points instantly because you just spawn a bunch of muscles. And the muscles are like 6/4s. It's kind of crazy. You love dwarves? I mean, I love dwarf. I love Cleaver too. I play them. And especially in, like, Scoia'tael dwarves, when Novi Justice has a ton of targets, it plays for way too much tempo. I've also seen people play Philavandrel into Novi Justice, or they played, like, where's the one that has Veil? I forget the name of the card. Francesca. Well, like, if you've never seen someone play, like, if somebody plays Francesca, right? And you don't have a Heat Wave, right? The next turn they play Tempering from Leader or from Mahakam Pass. And then they play Novi Justice twice. And it plays for like 40 points. Like, it's a silly amount of tempo considering it also plays a Bronze Dwarf and Thins. Like, it can be one less tempo. Especially since Novigrad Justice, when this was initially buffed, I said it was a bad idea. But since then, Novi Justice lost a provision. It's 9 provisions now. It used to be 10. Like, it's kind of crazy to me. Maybe Shiru provision increases card is kind of too... Shiru is very strong, yes, but I don't think one provision increase is going to change anything because Shiru decks play a million 4P cards already. I long advocated that Armor's Workshop should have been what got nerfed in that Shiru Dwarves deck, because Armor's Workshop was playing for too many points for a 6p card. For a 5p card, right? Sorry. It was playing for as much points as Sangreal, and it was 5p for no reason. Like, to me, it should have been 6 provisions, and then they wouldn't have been able to play as many backup plans or like Alzur's Thunders and like all sorts of other removals like Mastercrafted Spear, etc. in those decks. But Shiru's not a bad suggestion. Like, the thing about Shiru is that it's kind of a skillful card to play, because both players have to like you have to keep track of what power his Shiru is at, and you know, like he's got to know exactly like what power Shiru to set it to. There's a lot of skill involved on both sides, and both players have play and counterplay. It is probably a little too strong or a little too in favor of the Shiru player in some matchups, but those decks tend to also have weaknesses against other stuff. I've never found Shiru decks to be oppressive, just strong or annoying. And I think that's okay, considering they take a lot of skill to play. He mostly plays Zoltan Dwarf deck, very funny, yeah. Wispus. Wispus is a good option. Wispus is a good option to go to 7. It's just, I'm just expecting the same group that buffed Vabiorn and Falv and Menno and did they buff Ermion yet? Like the same group that buffed all the other ones. I'm just waiting for them to buff this also. So I'm not putting it in there, because they started it, they need to finish it. That's it. So that's a good option. Like, are there other cards that I think like deserve a provision decrease? Fruits of Yiskith deserves a provision decrease, as in a nerf. So it's like this should be -1 provisions. This should be 13 at most. I don't think this should be 16. Or this. I think these are like two of the strongest leaders in Nilfgaard already in terms of points. But I don't they don't bother me enough to advocate for nerfing them. Because people have nerfed those decks in other ways, or those decks just suck for other reasons. But these don't deserve to be 16. This. I would nerf this until it was 1 provision. I think this is the worst thing to happen to Gwent. This leader. Like, it fundamentally breaks the game. And anytime Inspire Zeal becomes less playable is a good thing for Gwent. Double Cross. You saying this should be 15 provisions? Yeah, I mean, you're right. It did get unnecessarily buffed. It's because people wanted to see old assimilate or something. But it's a very strong leader ability. It shows you 5 of your opponent's cards. It copies 1. It was the dominant one until Enslaved got buffed. But also there was a few seasons where Assimilate wasn't good for a variety of reasons. Mostly because it doesn't have good control. And an Assimilate deck always had good points but not control, and so, because it was it had its own goals it had to play, and then the provisions it had left were all tactics for Calvite. And Assassination is okay, but you really wanted Stefan. Stefan is what made it competitive, and if you're playing Stefan, you might as well play Enslaved. So that's why Double Cross fell out of favor, and then they kept adding provisions or hoping for it to come back by giving it provisions and other things. And it didn't. And now it's just used in more abusive decks. Chinese guys want to buff Commandos to 5 power. Don't know if there's a way to prevent this. you can't prevent it. All you can do is like some of the other stuff you saw in this list, which is like nerfing Defender, nerfing Full Test. I'm tired of fighting against the current. So I try, like, I'm exhausted from trying to like defeat the tide of stupid. So I choose instead to focus my input on on suggesting and promoting good changes. Imprisonment should be 14. Imprisonment was really annoying. Like, it's too good at 15 or 16. Because it's a control leader. Control leaders should always be more expensive. That being said, I do think 16 is too many provisions. It's just also that Nilfgaard Golds kind of suck. A lot of them. At least they suck in the sense that, like, they don't have cards like Zoltan Warrior that are just unconditional, lots of points, and kind of demand an answer all at once. Their cards require conditions, and at high level play, good players can counterplay them. Otherwise, it'd be more popular. At very, very high level play, there's people like Mimon who love Double Cross because it gives them visibility into what the opponent has and allows them to make plays that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. But that's not something that applies to most people. This is the one that's really egregious, because this is already, it's like each time you use it, it's 2 points and 2 armor, right? So it's 8 points and 8 armor, and it swaps positions. And it's granular, so you can, like, you really use it to get exactly the amount of points you need. This is good because it's a lot of points. Like, usually this plus Snowdrop is 25 points. That's a lot for a leader. But it's fine. Like, Nilfgaard, like, you can't really balance leaders in isolation because you can't just pick and choose any leader with any deck. You're restricted to your faction. And even then, like, there's certain cards that require certain leaders. So it's fine. Like, right now, soldiers aren't super popular. And the better way to nerf soldiers is Sergeant. So it's fine. Everything here is fine. This is bad. This should be 13. This should be 12. This should really be 12 provisions. If you make this 12, then we can, like, buff other cards like Demovand and Rafard's Vengeance and whatnot. Like, by power. So that they're playable in other decks. Right now, you can only play them in Zeal, and Zeal gives them 2 power and gives them immediate value. It's ridiculous. Like Radovid. I was never in favor of nerfing Radovid's power. Or Demovand's power. You know, like, or like those cards should all be like +1 power, and then this should be nerfed into the ground. Because why? What's the difference? Because if I play this and you have a turn to deal with it, then it's a fair card. Then it makes sense that it's like an Oniromancy with 5 more points, because you could lock it. But when you play this, Zeal it, click it, and play 1 bronze out of it, or 1 card out of it. It doesn't have to be bronze. You can use this to play like Mutagenerator or Rafard's Vengeance. And now, like, which do I answer? That's ridiculous. Like, it's fine for Hensel to do that because he only works on cards that have crew. This works on literally any card, neutral or not. And even if it doesn't work, like, it thins 3. Hensel thins 1. Okay? And then is an engine that goes tall. This thins 3 and then lets you play all 3 of those cards. Right? And has 5 points. Like, it's an insane card. It's just fucking weird. Like, look at these other 13 provision cards. Which one of them is different? It's this one. It's insane. It's an insane card. But it's not as insane if it doesn't have Zeal. Right? then it's kind of okay because the opponent can answer it. He was playing a triple carryover shoot with double cross and Henry. Yeah. What about Iron Knight Provision nerf? Yeah, that's a good one. That's actually always a good suggestion. Like this card is just rotten cancer and promotes degenerate. Like it just lets people play decks that have no points and have lots of mid-range tempos, like just point slam control decks, but because of Arendite, they just happen to get carryover and win games. So I mean, I support a nerf to this. I also support a nerf to Freya's because I think it's still a problem. I just haven't seen it this season for whatever reason. I haven't seen any Utkel decks. I don't know why. Maybe something got nerfed that I didn't pay attention to. But this should still be 6 provisions. So should this. This is a higher priority because it's removal and thinning, whereas this is like, this requires a graveyard. So there's some counterplay against this possible right now, because you can squirrel it and you can squirrel the thing that it's going to res, and you know when it can and can't be played, and they have to draw it or whatever. Like, they have to play it so that they can reuse it with Utkel. Like, there's some things that an Utkel deck has that you can take advantage of. Abordage is like, rewards them for the stuff they were already going to do, which was vomit tempo, do damage to your cards, and play their own cards. Like, it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? Okay. So, yo, Scoots McBoots. Thank you, man. Thanks for the drop. Appreciate the prime. It means a lot.
Scoots_McBoots. Hola, just dropping in to drop a sub. Take care, sir.
Kerpatan and Doran? So they're together now? Okay. Witch Hunter +1 power. I'm fine with it. And El Conqueror +1 power. I'm fine with it. I wouldn't prioritize any of these, but I'm fine with all 3 of these changes. I'm fine with this, as you saw in the Shinmiri votes or survey, which I should also submit. Demon Smuggler -1 provision. No. No. Not unless Freya also gets nerfed. Like, Freya has to get nerfed. This was way too good at 5 provisions. It was in every fucking deck, and everybody was playing. Like, no. What are you thinking? I'm sorry. Kerpatan and Doran, I expected better. Axel provision. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. This is power decrease. Oh. Really? They want to decrease the power? Nobody was playing it at 3 power ever. Even at 5 provisions it saw no play. I mean, people didn't know about the Utkel combo then? Are they saying, does anybody know, are they saying make it 3 power and then they're gonna make it lower provision? Any of my viewers know Doran and Kerpatan's logic for this one? Is Smuggle Nerf part of a 2-step adjustment to 3 power minus provision? If not, I think the card ends up being really bad as a conditional 8 for... Brothers, you don't need to watch the 1-hour video. We explain them top to bottom. You can find Smuggler part and watch. I think he means you do. Anybody have the video? Why didn't he link the video that we're supposed to watch? What video? People played Conquerors, NL Conquerors with Portal before. These guys are dumb. You don't think you have later plans for the cards? How are you gonna post like these suggestions and then tell everybody who replies to you to go watch the video, and then not link the video? Hey, Full Tilt.
Hello, motherfucker.
Full Tilt, do you know what the why Doran and Kerpeton are suggesting Demon Smuggler? Yeah, what video? Like, I'm just like, somebody linked this. This is Kerpeton Dar's Balance Council suggestions. I'm like, this is fine. And then this, I was like, what's the idea? Thank you, Hatham. Very quiet. Let me turn it up. So Watcher, they want to play from Truffle, and if it's 5 power, it will survive and give Bonded to the other thing. Sure, that's fine. You can't see. My bad. Anybody know which part has... Yeah, I agree. I agree with Flamingo change. He's probably going to explain that, right? Like a lot of decks against Flamingo, you can if you don't have last say, and they play Flamingo, they win because you don't have enough points to beat just the Flamingo, even if you kill everything else. Whereas if you can answer it with last say, it's usually not a problem. So a power nerf to Flamingo doesn't nerf the Flamingo deck against decks that can get last year or have the tall punish to deal with it. But it does make other decks not have to get last say against Flamingo, which is a good change. Yeah. I 100% agree. 100% agree. But, well, why? No one's playing it right now. Yeah. Okay, he's saying it's still way too strong at 6 provisions. So I can't watch the whole thing. It's too slow. Y'all can watch it. It's linked in the chat if you want. I think it's good content because it's 2 top players talking about balance. Even if you don't like agree with everything they say or whatever, like you can still I'll probably watch it later when I'm not streaming. I think it's interesting and valuable content. So I'm happy to promote it, even though Kerpeton hates me. Because I'm not a child. Yeah, I agree. First, you should nerf abordage, and then see what happens. But okay, to go back to the rest of this, Axel -1 power. Sure, this has always been a good idea. At this point, Axel is like, it's kind of fine. I don't know. Maybe I've just gotten used to it, but I don't have a problem with it. So it's not a high priority for me. This is not a change I would advocate reverting, but it's also not a change that I like would prioritize. Then again, like Flaminca, I don't see much either these days. But who knows? Morntart. I mean, why though? It's like in 1.5 decks. It's not that popular. And it gets answered with Last Say Spore, like, or gets countered by Last Say Spore. Like, it's a brick in round 1 or round 2. It's vulnerable to Tall Punish or a reset. Like, that's 2 things, right? And it requires an entire deck to set it up for it to play for a lot of points. Like, if you're not creating a bunch of units with Hivemind, or thinning a ton of units out of your deck so that everything's in the graveyard, as in like my Renfree deck, or the scenario deck. If you're not creating units with Kashi, like, this plays as like a in round 3. Let's say it's a 5-card round 3, right? That means 14 cards have been played in round 1 and 2. So this plays as a 15 for 10. A 15 for 10 that gets answered by a Geralt or a Spore, if the opponent has Last Say. Like, I can't say further without watching the video, and that's boring content, so I'll do that on my own time. But my first impression from this list is, man, I love playing control decks, and I really hate it when I delete everything they play, but opponent had red coin and got Last Say, and they have 1 card that survives, and that 1 card counters everything else I do because I play Pirates. Right? Like, I'm not a fan of like Mamuna tempo abuse, but I also don't necessarily think Mamuna. The problem with like Mamuna has counterplay. The problem is they play Griffin and Fiend and then they megascope them. So even if you squirrel one, they have other options. So it, like, I don't know if there's a way to promote counterplay. Or just nerf Griffin, right? Not because Griffin deserves to be nerfed, but because Mamuna playing a card from your deck that is in your graveyard is really interesting when it's not used, when it's not just 22 points, right? Like, or when it's not just a 20-point bleed card. When it's a 20-point bleed card, it's oppressive. Because they open with it and then they pass, and then you're like, they get 3 points on their Erendite, and I have to play 2 cards, so they keep their last say. Like, that's kind of ridiculous. And they thin their deck, so they're more likely to draw their Heatwave or their Erendite or whatever other, like, Eskel and whatnot. But it's not playable in round 1, unless you play cards like Imlerith, right? So it allowed to be a little stronger. And it's vulnerable to Graveyard Abuse or Yoink. Like, if you Heatwave if they play their first Griffin and you Heatwave it, you can potentially brick the Megascopes they have in their hand, and you also make their Mamuna be 2 less points. It's just that's like a really bad trade, Heatwave for a Griffin. Not against that deck necessarily always. Sometimes it's good. A lot of times, if I have Riptide, I will instantly kill the Griffin just so they can't Megascope it. Because Fiends are not very good once with like a Roach or Knickers on the board or whatever. I don't know. If you can remove... But that's the only removable target you have against that deck, plus Piggies. So I don't know. The real problem... Like, these are a symptom. Nobody's playing these things in anything other than a Fruits Erendite deck. So... my suggestion was to nerf Fruits and Erendite so that like Relics can still play Mamuna, or a Thrive deck can still play Mamuna for consistency, or for defending a bleed, or for proccing Thrive twice in one turn or something. Like you play Bloody Mistress, and then the next turn you can play Mamuna into another unit so that it procs Thrive or something. I don't know. I used to play Mamuna to proc Thrive with Kashi. But at 2 power, Mamuna doesn't really proc a lot of Thrives anymore. It would need to be at least 3 power. So, like, with Iris Companions, you can do it. But Kiramet's Provision Decrease, I disagree. This is like an answer or lose card. Sea Serpent is a pretty bad card. I would rather you just increase its power. Sorry, yeah. So increase its floor. Because I think there's plenty of good 4 provision cards already. And it would be good to have some good 5 provision cards. Plus, like, for Rain to have like a more... like a removal card that doesn't heavily tempo punish you. I don't know. Maybe not. That's fine. I'll watch the video. We can talk about these some other time. But these are not, honestly, they're not the worst. Certainly, like, the stuff on this list is better than the stuff that was in the Shin Lirio survey. So, I've already responded. Can I see the results? Guess not.